Hello, my friends. Welcome back to our little corner of stories. This is my own take on these characters and what might happen next, built from the heart. You know what's beautiful about love? It shows up loudest when everything else falls apart. Today, we follow two brothers, James and Hung, and their father, a man buried under 20 billion in debt. His timber business collapsed. He owes workers, he owes the bank, he owes partners who trusted him. And here's the thing. Most families would scatter when money troubles hit. This one did the opposite. Let me introduce you to Hung first. He's the eldest son, the one who carries weight without complaining. And his brother James, steady and quiet, the kind of man who shows up when it matters. What I love about Hung is simple. He sold the one thing he treasured most, his car, without making a speech about it. No drama, just love in action. That's the kind of man who builds a family back up brick by brick. Let me tell you what happened. Hung walked into a dealership and sold his beloved car for 1 billion, 150 million Vietnamese dong. The buyer haggled, asked for a discount. Hung barely flinched. To him, that car was a friend. He'd driven it through mountains, through floods, through every hard road of his life. And he let it go. Why? Because his father needed him. Picture this. Hung sitting across from the dealer, signing papers, handing over the keys. The dealer says it feels like losing a close friend. And Hung just nods, because he already knows what that feels like. He's saying goodbye to something he loved, and he's doing it with his chin up. But here's what nobody saw coming. When Hung brought the money home, it wasn't 20 billion, it was just 1.3 billion. A drop in the ocean. And yet, the way he gave it, you'd think it was the whole world. He handed it to his father and said, "Pay the workers first, don't cause trouble. We'll find another way." That's not nothing. That's everything. Let me ask you something. How many of us would sell our most treasured possession for a parent who made mistakes? Because make no mistake, the father wasn't perfect. The brothers even admit it. He was a little selfish in his time. But love doesn't keep a scorecard. Hung sat with his father and laid out a plan. Negotiate with the timber dealers, stretch their payments to 6 months, maybe a year. Pay the workers no matter what, because those men have wives and children waiting. Settle with the bank before the deadline, step by step, calm and clear. And James? He pledged to raise 12, maybe 13 billion within 2 weeks. Half the debt. The brothers would carry the rest together. But that's just the beginning of how this family decided to stand as one. Last we left off, Hung had sold his car and handed his father everything he had. Now the real work began. Here's where it gets tender. James started visiting the family more often. One afternoon, he showed up with bags of food from the market. Smoked pork, fresh vegetables, things he'd picked up just passing through. He cooked lunch for everyone, including little Nai, the granddaughter. And the grandmother, she fussed the way grandmothers do. She told him, "Next time, don't buy so much. Just come and visit. You bought too much. I'm embarrassed." But you could see it in her eyes. She wasn't embarrassed at all. She was grateful. She was warm. She was a woman watching her family pull together when it counted. They sat around the table. Ni ate her vegetables. Someone served the grandmother a piece of pork. "Thank you, child," she said. And for a moment, the 20 billion didn't exist. There was only the family, the food, and the simple joy of being together. Here's what touches me about this. In the middle of the worst financial storm of their lives, this family kept making lunch for each other. They kept sharing watermelon from the garden. They kept saying thank you. That's resilience you can't buy. Let me show you the heart of it. There's a moment where Hung says something that stops you cold. He says, "My car has been with me a long time." but my father has been with me longer. My father is the one who raised me. Think about that. He compared the thing he loved most to the man who gave him life. And the man won. Every time. Hung went on. The money you spent raising me, I could never repay in a lifetime. Now that you're struggling, my car means nothing. Just take the money. The father, humbled, said he was sorry. He said none of this was what anyone wanted. And Hung answered with the gentlest truth. At least you still have your children here. And then something beautiful happened. The father, who had carried his shame alone, finally let his sons in. He stopped hiding the numbers. He stopped pretending. He thanked them for not abandoning him. For a proud man, that's a mountain to climb. And he climbed it because his children met him halfway. Hung committed to raising 10 billion within 2 weeks. James would arrange the rest. The father would negotiate with the creditors and report back. A real plan. A united front. The pieces were finally moving, and the family that money nearly broke was becoming stronger than before. Now watch what builds. The father stepped out to face his creditors. The workers first, always the workers. Because 2 billion was owed to men with families to feed. Hung's money went straight to them. No delays. No excuses. And something shifted in that house. Hope started growing, slow and steady, like a vine reaching for the sun. The brothers checked in with each other. They borrowed where they could. James reached out to friends he hadn't asked before. Every conversation ended the same way. Call me, let me know, we'll find a way together. You know what that means? It means nobody was carrying this alone anymore. Here comes the moment that matters most. The 3 men, father and 2 sons, sat down and made a quiet vow. We need to be truly united. We need to help Dad get through this. And the father, voice breaking, said thank you to his children for not walking away. That's the mini climax of our story. Not a check arriving. Not a debt erased. Something better. A father and his sons choosing each other. Out loud. On purpose. Hung even told his brother, I think I'll change a lot after this. And James said softly, I hope so too. 2 brothers, dreaming of a day they'd buy another car together. An S15, oh, they joked, someday, when the storm passes. And here's the partial resolution. The workers got paid. The plan was set. 12 billion within reach, 10 more on the way. The family had a path forward for the first time. The fear that had frozen them was melting into action. But the debt isn't gone yet. There's still the bank, still the timber dealers, still negotiations that could go either way. The story isn't finished. This is the part that gives me hope. When a family stops asking who's to blame and starts asking how do we fix this together, that's when miracles get a foothold. That's when love does its quiet, powerful work. So where does this leave us? With a family standing shoulder to shoulder, a father humbled and grateful, 2 sons who'd give up anything for the man who raised them. The hardest road is still ahead. But they're walking it together now. But the most beautiful moment is still ahead, my friends. What I think comes next will warm your heart in ways you won't expect.